But let me just begin by saying, and I think the chairman's already asked, it's clear that there was no hacking of voting machines and the changes of tallies. And I would argue this has nothing even to do, because this term hacking is thrown around and it makes it sound like some sort of cyber-specific situation. The cyber tools were used as a means to an end. It isn't necessarily what we should be focused on here. What we're talking about here is active measures. The active measures taken by the government of Vladimir Putin to influence and to potentially manipulate American public opinion for the purpose of discrediting individual political figures, sowing chaos and division in our politics, sowing doubts about the legitimacy of our elections. So if you look at the situation we now face, here's the aftermath. We had an election where, after some intrusions into some state databases, there was a one nominee for president warning about fraud in the election. And then after the election, we have some on the other side questioning the legitimacy of the president-elect because of Russian interference. And we have the president-elect questioning the credibility of the intelligence community because of its findings. This sounds like a pretty effective and successful effort to sow chaos, to undermine credibility of our leaders and of our government institutions. In essence, it sounds like they achieved what they wanted, to get us to fight against each other over whether our elections were legitimate and divide us in the way that sows the sort of chaos that they sought to achieve. My question is along the lines of what Senator Warner asked about a moment ago, because we've seen these active measures employed in the Baltic states with Russian-speaking media outlets controlled by the Kremlin, in the Dutch referendum, in the Brexit vote, in the Italian referendum. So let me lay out a hypothetical, and you tell me if this is the kind of scenario we could face, because they don't limit this to elections. They target individual policymakers throughout many countries in Europe, particularly those in the former Soviet sphere. Hypothetically, imagine if there's a U.S. senator or congressman who adopts a policy position that the Kremlin does not agree with. And so somehow, through a phishing expedition, they gain access to your personal computer network. And once they gain access to your personal computer network, they use it to fabricate and or actually conduct, you use the child pornography example, I'd say, let's say money laundering activity. And then they call law enforcement and tip them off. Congressman John so-and-so has been money laundering. And they go into your home, they seize your computer, and sure enough, it's sitting there on your network because someone got into it and did it. And now you're arrested and you're charged and you're removed from the public discourse. Is this not what we have seen, the tactics that have been employed by Russian intelligence on behalf of the government of Vladimir Putin and other countries around the world? Is that not a tactic they have used to discredit individual political figures? And isn't it true that that could very well happen here in the United States?
It is certainly well within their both their technical competence and their potential intent to do things like that. The last 2 years running in my threat presentations, I've cited that I think the next worrisome trend in the cyber business will be the compromise of the fidelity of information, and whether it's for a criminal purpose or a political purpose. So this is well within the realm, I think, of possibility.
In the context of what their goals were, ultimately, their ultimate goal, they may have or not, I don't get into the whole thing about who they wanted to see win, but in the end, what they really wanted to see was Americans fighting against each other, bickering over these things, having questions about the legitimacy of the process, our leaders, et cetera. Was that not their goal? And if it was, have they not largely achieved that based on how this issue has been discussed since the aftermath of the election?
I think in the first instance, that was their goal, was first, as I said in my prepared remarks, was to sow doubt about the efficacy of our system and to cast aspersions on our political system.
Since to create doubts about the credibility of our elections, the legitimacy of our leaders, et cetera.
All that, yes.
Okay. And so my last point is, last time I checked, Vladimir Putin is neither a registered Democrat nor a registered Republican. And so what he is interested in is achieving these measures in the United States for his own strategic purposes. And therefore, there is literally neither political party should take this lightly. It should not be a partisan issue. This involves whether or not we are going to allow someone to actively interfere in our political discourse and divide us as a nation against each other.